Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. My name is Salim Siddiqui, and thanks for watching the Hot Conflict video series talking about Eid al-Akbar, or the great celebration of the Muslims called the Great Eid, or the Eid of Sacrifice, where Muslims like myself gathered even here in Houston with their families to pray and worship to the Lord Most High, while at the same time believers from all over the world were gathered in the holy house in the Arabian Peninsula at Mecca, where Abraham and his son Ishmael built a house to worship the Lord. And we've been telling the story and talking about the importance of some of the details. And so, again, like I said, whenever we start any of these videos, I need to give a little disclaimer. Always on the hotconflict.com website, we talk about Islam and some of the different issues from pop culture and myth and storytelling, and how we look at these issues and dispel some of the misconceptions and understand things from a different perspective by using terminology and an explanation in our modern times while still referencing classic scripture from the Quran or the Sunnah, meaning the book of God or Allah and the statements of his messenger Muhammad. And we've said in many of the videos, Allah, the term Allah in Arabic refers to the Lord Most High, the God who created you and me and the world that we're in and the universe and all of the things that are in it. Allah, who is above and higher than all of this. Allah, the only one that there is to be worshipped. La ilaha illallah, the statement of the Muslims, which means there's only one God. Right? And so we've been saying, what are the fundamentals of faith? The fundamentals of the faith that all the prophets came and were sent with from the Lord are all the same, from Adam and all of his children downwards, that there is a God Most High, and he is the one who created us, and he created Adam. He created the angels who are made of light, and he created another type of race called the jinn. They are in the other dimension, or they're part of the unseen world. They're made of smokeless fire, as described in the original Arabic. That could be understood as power, plasma, energy, some other form. And we know from texts and authentic sources that there are many different races within the jinn. There are many different categories of the jinn, including different sizes, and some that have wings and tails, and some that are reptilian and shapeshifters, and all the other descriptions that we have from the text. And so we've been talking about this concept, and that all of this is there for us to see, and that God sends prophets with signs and miracles from the Lord and books, and that there is a day of judgment where you will be judged for your actions, and there is punishment and reward both in heaven and hell, which is eternal and everlasting, and that you have been created out of clay and mud, or earth, and breathed into a soul, and you are the children of Adam. And that there is a constant war going on between you and Satan, who was the leader of the jinn race at that time, who challenged Allah, the Lord Most High, that our race, the human race, the children of Adam, cannot be superior. And so we know that this struggle is going on. And we were talking about the history or the truth of the story. And I've been getting into a lot of strange concepts, so again, I'm giving that disclaimer that we're going to be talking about some strange things. Now, in the last video where we left off was... we left off with Musa. Like I said, I'm going to give a little disclaimer. The things I might say might sound strange and ridiculous. They might be told to you for the first time, and you might be hearing the truth in a way that you've never heard it before. I might use terms that you never heard used to describe the situation, and so it could make you feel very uncomfortable, but what I'm telling you is true, and if you pay attention to the details and listen to the story and think about it and ponder on it, there is a chance that you just might see something. And so we get to Moses, and we described how Moses went through this miraculous situation where Moses was from the children of Israel, from the descendants of Jacob and his sons, from Isaac, from Abraham, who was the pillar and our father, who made the vow to establish the fact that our human race, our bloodline, will always be believing in the one true Lord, and he wanted from his descendants to be great believers. Now, that doesn't mean, obviously, that every person who's ever from that bloodline is always going to be a pure saint. No, there's people who believe and disbelieve. But, I mean, he wanted to have his descendants be great in number of true believers in the one Lord, as Adam taught his sons, and Noah taught his people, and Abraham taught Isaac and Ishmael. And so the children of Israel were hardcore on the remembering of the one true Lord. And they were the ones on the planet who were worshiping that true one faith. And we have a situation where the Jews found themselves in Egypt. And Moses is born in Egypt, and because the pharaohs were trying to make sure that the signs that they had heard of the coming prophets, like we said, that the articles of faith are all the same, and so all the prophets always told everyone else the same articles of faith. All of this is planned and destined, and there are prophets coming and books coming, and this is the way it's going to go, and so beware of the signs. And as a matter of fact, we even talked about this, and if you don't know this, go back to the section on Noah, where we mentioned the fact that even Noah warned his people of all the coming prophets and told them signs on what to see for who are the true prophets, and warned of the false prophet, which we term the Dajjal, the final false Messiah that many of the scriptures talk about. And so the prophets all taught their people the same articles of faith, and so the people in Egypt, and we've talked about this in other videos, so I don't want to get too deeply into it. It's very clear that the pharaohs had figured out a way to work with some of the other alien jinn races. And if we go back through history and go see the evidence that we have in Egypt, we know to this day that scientists are still debating how the pyramids were built and when they were built. If you talk to any Muslim scholar, they can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, they've known from the very beginning that the pyramids were built using magic. And I'm sure if you spent some time with a Jewish scholar, even if you're not Jewish and, got to know them after a few sessions, and they, trusted you, they would tell you, yes, they know that the Egyptians were using sorcery and all kinds of alien technology and mixing with the other races, and this was a problem. And you can see the evidence in the Egyptian tombs and the hieroglyphics and some of the depictions of, the flying saucers of aliens, the depictions of the reptoids, the depictions of the half-man, half-animal creatures. Again, so many references to the stars, and even this whole design and structure of the pyramids and the specific mathematics put into it, and the alignment with the different star systems that we know are related to specific alien races, that modern day ufologists have concurred that some of the jinn races are living in certain solar systems and have inhabited different parts of the galaxies as well. And so we know that they had been working at that time, and even some specific Egyptian hieroglyphs showing, for example, the helicopter on the Egyptian tombs, the flying saucer, and some of the other things. And so we know that the jinn race, although normally people don't describe the jinn to you as alien races or extra-dimensional beings or creatures who have the ability to morph, or they're smokeless fire, energy, plasma, electricity. They're another form of creation, and they have their own technology, and they have their own lineage. And Satan obviously was one of the what normally people in modern day times would call draconians, reptoid, shape-shifting, telepathic abilities, horn-ridged heads, long tail royals, if you understand the terminology. Now, Moses was predicted, as all prophets are predicted, and so the people of the descendants of Isaac and Jacob and the children of Israel knew that Moses was going to come. And so at that time, the pharaohs, and perhaps with some knowledge from the alien races, were able to suggest that the pharaohs kill all the male-borns to try and stop that Adam's bloodline from getting a new leader. And we know the story in the tale, and we talked about it, and Moses was saved by, as Allah wants it, and Allah's the best of planners. He was picked up and taken into the house of Pharaoh and raised in the best of situations. And when he got to the point of being a little bit older and realizing what was going on and realized he was connected to the children of Israel and that he wasn't from their bloodline in the house of Pharaoh, he went through some personal situations, but he grew up in the house of Pharaoh. He grew up as the best of the best, learning and seeing and knowing, and he was put in charge of some very important things while he was there, and this is how Allah plans these things, right? I mean, this is the way Allah works, but all this is there for you in the story if you pay attention to the details. But Moses had to leave, and we know that he then went out into the desert and ended up finding some of the other descendants of Abraham, who were also following the one true God still, and he ended up marrying and spending some time in the Mount Sinai area, and is there where he was called to Mount Sinai, and it was at that point that Moses gets chosen. Well, obviously Moses was already chosen, and the Lord Most High knows, as part of the Articles of Faith, right? All of this is by the plan and qadr of Allah, but I mean, it was that point that Moses gets chosen for his experience, right? And he goes to the mountain, and there's some very important things. He sees the burning bush that Allah lights for him to show him this bush in the middle of the mountain is just having what? Fire. A symbol there, right? And so Moses goes to see what is this fire, and when he gets there, he has been doing what in the desert times? He's been, tending sheep and doing what all prophets at some point in their life do, which is tend sheep and learn how to take care of a flock. And that's important in this story. But Moses is out there tending sheep, and so he has his little, his asa, his staff, and he climbs up Mount Sinai because he has been trying to figure out what the heck just happened. I mean, you see some of the depictions of Moses. He's out in Sinai, and he's married, and he has the best of situations because he's welcomed in the tribe of believers, and he's treated as such a good person because he's so able and knowledgeable, and he's a strong man, he's healthy, and he gets married, and he has children. But he, spiritually and mentally, he's so disturbed that his situation is like this, and he wants so badly to know the truth. Again, back to our story when we said, I'm going to be telling you this story, and included in there is the truth. And the truth is very difficult. If you're searching for it, you have to truly be searching for it. And if you're listening and God blesses you with the moment, then you get guidance, and only then do you get it. Sometimes you could hear the story 1,000 times, and you don't understand it. You could be listening to me and think this sounds like quackitude. But when it is the time for you to hear the story and understand it, then there's the moment. And so Moses has this moment when he is able to figure out the truth. And so how does the situation play out? Well, Moses goes to the mountain, and he sees the burning bush. And he starts to speak to Allah, or even more importantly to say, Allah speaks to him. Allah speaks to him. I mean, it's just such an amazing thing to say that he actually gets to speak to Allah. That's one of the beauties of Moses. It's what makes Moses one of the great prophets. I mean, as Muslims, like I said, one of the things that we believe as Muslims is people always are confused, and one of the misconceptions, like I said, I'm going to tell you the story, and I'm going to tell you the truth, and I'm going to dispel to you the myths. They'll tell you all kinds of crazy things that Muslims believe, and what is it that I told you Muslims believe? La ilaha illallah. There's only one God. Right? And the articles of faith are always the articles of faith. All of this is going to happen, and all of this has been destined, and there's books and angels, a day of judgment, and all that we've spoken about. But Moses gets to actually go and speak to Allah. And so as Muslims, we always revere Moses as one of the greatest prophets, and we call him Kalam Allah, the one who spoke to God. I mean, that's just amazing. And Allah tells him what? I'm your Lord thy God. I'm your Lord thy God. And Moses doesn't understand. So God tells him to throw down his staff, and it turns into a snake. And so he sees this power. What is this? And then God tells him to take his hand and put it into his breast. Right? And some narrations all the way under his armpit. And when it comes out, somehow God turned it so that his hand had like the light. His hand glowed. His hand had the light. And also, what else? For one of the first thing that God tells Moses, what? Take off your shoes. This is holy ground that you pray on. This is area to pray on. It's holy ground, right? This ground is where people worship the Lord Most High. So don't soil it, right? It's an important little part of the story. And so Moses is blessed, and Moses is so happy, right? But like in all the stories I told you, like you get the blessing and you get the truth, but the truth has a burden. The truth has a burden, because once you know it, then you find out the truth that you're supposed to be doing something. So straight away God tells him, hey, now you know the truth. By the way, you've got some work to do. What do you mean, O Rab? What are you talking about, Allah? You got to go back. You've been wondering this whole time what was it all about, and you want to know who God really is? Now you know, and you think what? You think you get to just chill out, relaxing, get to do nothing? No, you got to go back, right? Every prophet had to do what? Every prophet has to confront his people. Every person who wants to tell the truth of the story has to confront their people, right? Adam with his own sons, and they wouldn't believe. Noah with his son, and his wives, some of them, and the rest of the whole world. Abraham and his dad, so messed up, right? Ibrahim, what? Challenged with his wife. Throw out there in the middle of nowhere. Ismail, go sacrifice him. Ibrahim's example, though, is different. Why? Because he said, oh Allah, he begged for so long that my people, okay, don't test me like the other people. I want my people to be hardcore. I want my bloodline to be good. And so his both sons were like straight up from the beginning, knowing the truth. So he had different tests where he almost had to sacrifice Isaac. He almost never had, he almost had to sacrifice Ishmael, his firstborn from Hagar. Important reference point, and Isaac being later, when Sarah couldn't bear children for so many years. They went through those trials, but his children were born pure and never disbelieving. So his family was good in that way. But Moses, God tells him, you're going back. Going back where? Going back to Pharaoh? Oh no, not to Pharaoh. That's like the worst place in the world. They're all totally messed up. They're like the most pagan of the pagan. And they've got all the messed up sorcery, black magic, alien technology, all kinds of nonsense. Some of their early pharaohs were reptoid, green skins. Well, Moses doesn't doubt the job, but he knows it's going to be hard. This is one of those conditions where Moses is cooler than any other of the prophets in this special way. Not cooler that he is superior, but cool in the sense that he understood his family. He's like, hey Allah, since we're talking, and I'm going to be going back to Pharaoh, how about some backup, right? Seriously. What? He's like, my brother, can you deputize him? Moses asked for Aaron, his brother, to be deputized and make him a prophet. Allah's like, fine. Because Moses had the problem, like I said earlier, he had a problem with communication. And you want to go communicate to the people and tell them this story, he's going to have some difficulty. So he said, fine, your brother's a good talker. We deputize your brother and make him a prophet. That's why it's known amongst the Muslims that the best brother to another brother is Moses, right? I mean, the guy says, oh Allah, make my brother a prophet. Deputize him in the battle. By God. That's just the coolest brother you could ever have. Harun, as we call him in Arabic, or Aaron in English, right? So Aaron becomes the spokesman, and Moses performs the miracles and makes the decisions, right? Moses is a senior prophet. There's no way to doubt that from the great of the prophets, according to Islam. And so we know what happens, and Moses has to go back and in front of the court and pronounce the truth. There's only one God. We are the sons of Adam. We are born free. We are not slaves of any other man, and we worship no other man. There is only one God, and no one else is worthy of worship. My people are free. Let my people go. For the pharaohs, that was just ludicrous, right? I mean, who the hell do you think you are? Are you the same guy who tuck-tailed out of here years ago? And then we know the story of the snakes and the sorcerers of the pharaoh using whatever technology they had, holographic or magic. They threw their staffs to the ground and turned them into snakes. Moses threw his staff to the ground and it turned into a snake. But Allah's miracles are not magic. They're the will of Allah. And for Allah, this isn't some world that they use their extra alien technology and sorcery powers to control. Allah is the one who says be and it is, right? What Allah gave to Moses, his snake goes and swallows all the snakes, which actually, at that time was proof for them of their technology that that's not possible. What you just did is something that only the Lord Most High can do. And what happened to all the sorcerers in Pharaoh's court? They did what all believers do when they hear the truth. They fell down and put their head on the ground and said what? We believe in the Lord Most High. And for that, the Pharaoh obviously killed them, you know, because that didn't really go well with the Pharaoh in the middle of Pharaoh's castles. And Moses went through some more trials and the different plagues and different things that happened, and a lot of turning the water into red, and then the final edition where the pharaohs could no longer compete with the God of Moses and said, fine, just let your people go. We know that we have the story of a very similar story of the smoke coming and the sons of Egypt, the firstborns of their bloodline, dying. A very specific reference to what was mixing in their blood. Possibly an indication that their blood was impure, right? Meaning that we are not sure what kind of blood they had. Were they hybrid breeding with other jinns and other races? We know that after this point, the children of Israel escaped from Egypt, and we have the dramatic scene where Moses is at the edge of the water, and the children of Israel are doubting Moses's true messengership, unfortunately, and it's a repeating story that occurs in their community, and it's important to note that because it plays an important point later on in the story, and it's important for you to understand the plot as we tell the tale. But Moses obviously has the power to part the Red Sea, and not some nonsense like you hear some modern day pseudoscientists describe that at certain points the Red Sea was a marshy area that you could possibly walk through. No, the descriptions of the Quran talking about Moses is very clear that the sea was parted with walls of water. So be it by the commandment of the Lord, and Allah can do anything, but like anything, Allah orders his servant to put his staff into the water and the water parts. And the people are saved by another miracle, and they go across the Red Sea again to the other side. And they got into better ground, and Pharaoh and his armies are destroyed in the oceans of the sea. Now, at this point, we have to tell you a little bit about the truth of the story. Because we've been saying and talking about the children of Israel, and when we talk about the children of Israel, there's always a misunderstanding, especially between Muslims and Jews, that we're talking about two groups that are diametrically opposed and hate each other. What are the fundamentals of faith? Muslims believe La ilaha illallah. There's only one God. And all of those who are continuing to believe in that and understand the articles of faith, that there are going to be multiple prophets with multiple books, all being revealed by the true Lord, in a chain that will continue, and signs will be there, and all prophets told them of the signs, all the way to a certain amount of prophets, and then there will be false prophets, and then there will be the end. And that there are angels made of light who do not disobey and do the commandments of their Lord, and there are other races known as jinn, and there are many different races, we're not sure how many, we know of specific references from the Quran of Sunnah, from different types of jinn. They're not all the same kind. There's multiple races of them. And we know that the other sign is what? That there are books and prophets, and there's a day of judgment, and all the other similar ideas. And so this idea that Muslims and Jews are opposed to each other, or that Christians and Jews are opposed to each other, or this idea that the Jews are some kind of secretive cult type internal society, well, there's a lot of truth in that, and there's a lot of misconception in that. Just like we talk about the hotconflict.com website, all the misconceptions about Islam, if I'm going to tell you the truth about Jews, then I have to tell you the truth about the story and the way they understood it. And so let's go back. We always say the Jews are weird in what way? They have this strange thing where they kept to themselves, and they were specific to their tribes, and they intermarried, and they did all kinds of strange things. Well, what just happened, ladies and gentlemen? See, you've been told the story but didn't really get the story altogether, because nobody put together the myths and tales properly. And perhaps not even all of the children of Israel themselves really knew what was going on inside the holiest of holies of the temples. But Moses and the leaders of the Jews knew. They knew what I'm about to tell you. They knew that they were aliens, and they knew that there was probably some kind of interbreeding between the races. And they knew that even there was interbreeding between what? Some of the alien races of jinns and humans, the blood of Adam. That's insane, they thought, right? They thought at that time, this is just out of control. And so they've left the place of Pharaoh, where some of the knowledgeable of the children of Israel have seen what's really going on with the black magic and the technology from the other side, both technology and the supernatural powers of them as a different interdimensional being, and the ability to manipulate and do telepathy, and their powers to be able to control smokeless fire and plasma power, electricity, or whatnot. And modern day scientists are only now beginning to admit that within the houses of the Pharaoh they had batteries and electricity and technology that they had learned to make, possibly from the other alien races. Some people are still not willing to admit that, but talk to any Muslim scholars, they could have been telling you that for 1,500 years. What scientists are only debating, is this a possible theory today on the History Channel? No offense, History Channel, I love History Channel, since we're putting in a plug there. Because you're supposed to look back at your history and try and understand the story. And so, where do we get? We get to the point where Moses is leading the people out to go to their promised land. But they know the world is filled with all kinds of strange things, and the aliens have been possibly interbreeding. And there are hybrids and giants and morphs of all kind. We have got to keep our bloodline pure. Otherwise, we're going to lose the war. Do you understand the significance now of what the children of Israel understood